Welcome to Holy Health. I'm Coach Bring T. I am an ISSA certified personal trainer and a Precision Nutrition Level 1 certified nutrition coach. Boy, that was a mouthful. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell notification, and if you get something valuable out of this, or maybe you have a question, please leave a lovely comment below. After much thought and prayer and consideration, I decided to talk about myself. Just kidding. I actually want to talk about what God has done in my life and how He is molding me and shaping me and the woman that He created me to be. It wouldn't be much of a faith, fitness, and food channel if we don't talk about faith. So, for the next 4 weeks, I will be sharing my testimony of how I came to Christ, why I moved from Lincoln, Nebraska to Atlanta, Georgia, how I got into fitness and became a personal trainer, and last but not least, my experience with the medical industry as someone with endometriosis and hypothyroidism, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Make sure you check out all 4 videos. And as I mentioned before, if you get something valuable out of any of them, please leave a comment. Or if you have questions, don't feel scared to reach out, all right? And without further ado, here's my story, part 4. Fair warning, gentlemen, this is going to include some very female-related topics. If you don't want to know, you can leave now, but I do suggest that you stick around, as some of this may help you to finally understand the women in your life. It may also encourage you to start doing some digging of your own, as women are not the only ones who are affected by a very bad healthcare system. Ladies, tell me, does any of this sound familiar? I was a mere 14 years old, a freshman in high school, and I was cheering at a playoff volleyball game. My head was pounding, which was nothing new. I'm prone to migraines. My period started that day, or the day before. Details. All I remember is that my cramps were beyond manageable. They were excruciating, and I had that intense migraine. And all I knew is I needed to run to the bathroom the moment I could get a break. And that's exactly what I did. When I got there, my flow was extremely heavy, and the sight of it made me want to pass out even more than I already wanted to. And the worst part was no amount of pain medication, Tylenol, ibuprofen, none of that was doing anything for me at all. Like, it was bad. Unfortunately, the game was over 45 minutes away from home, and my parents both had to work late that day. And let's just say my mom was not happy when I called. She was definitely not happy. And I know I'm not alone in hearing this on a regular basis. As women, we hear it often of, it's just part of being a woman. Just learn to deal with it. Just suck it up, right? Every time you complained about how much pain you were in, how uncomfortable you were, how sick you felt, it was just deal with it. As if not being able to function at all normally, not even like a hint, just all you can do right now is just lay in bed and cry yourself to sleep and hope that you can sleep. Somehow that's just normal, right? Not to mention, my mom was today years old when she found out that there are 4 phases to the menstrual cycle. So when it came to teaching me about it, it was you're just going to have some blood in the toilet paper, possibly your underwear. If that happens, just put a pad on and you'll be fine. Everything's fine. If it hurts, take some pain medication. That's fine. Because that's what she was taught. Just suck it up and deal with it. The pain is part of it. It's just being a woman, right? Which is a blatant lie. But anyway, my mom drives 45 minutes to come pick me up. She is not happy. And I get in the car and she's like, if it's really that bad, we're going to the doctor tomorrow and I'm getting you on birth control. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. For generations, birth control has been the solution to every woman's problems. And still, unfortunately, is. From painful, heavy periods like my own to bad acne and many things in between. It's, here's candy. I mean, birth control. Listen, I'm done. All right? I'm done with it. And you're going to find out why. The next day, I am at the doctor. And without questioning or testing anything at all, the doctor prescribes me birth control. The only information I got was that it was going to balance out my hormones, which they never even tested in the first place. Decrease the pain, it's going to regulate my flow, and when you get married and you want to have children, all you got to do is just stop taking it like 3 months before you're ready to start having children. There are no side effects. Nothing. There's not going to be anything that could possibly go wrong. It's the magic pill. You just got to take it and you're going to feel better. I promise. Right? And at the time, I was in so much pain, I didn't care. I was like, give me freedom from this torturous monster that is trying to dig its way out of my body from the inside of my organs on out. Unfortunately, there are many, many risks, and not only did I struggle with the mood swings of anger and depression, one day I'm happy, one day I'm just randomly having an outburst. Now, I do believe that was demonically influenced mostly. I say that, I mean, in my previous videos, if you go back and watch my previous My Story videos, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, you hear me talk about the spirit of rage a lot. The spirit of rage was utilizing my weakness in this moment to basically make my life more miserable than it already was. So I was having a hard time controlling my mood swings, and then the devil was playing with me. The spirit of rage was using that against me and making it very hard for me to control anything at all, to the point where I found myself yelling at a piece of paper because it fell off the table when I put it on there. It didn't stay, or just randomly sitting there, nothing's wrong, and all of a sudden I'm just like feeling this sense of rage inside my body, and it's just boiling up, and I can't bring it back down no matter how hard I try. And I just start crying and screaming and freaking out. And I mean, like, that thing is real. Jesus delivered me from it. And yes, I've mentioned before that it's definitely still trying to come at me. It hasn't given up. I gave it a foothold. You have to watch a previous video for that full story. So please go back, watch all of my story videos for more context on that. But I'm struggling with mood swings. My digestive system is messed up, and I'm having stomach pains all the freaking time. And now, as I'm 30 years old, I'm finding out that I have hypothyroidism and fertility issues. Now, is it completely impossible? No. There are natural solutions. I'll get into that later. There are natural solutions, thankfully. Thank God that there's hope. But I am 30 years old, and I have hypothyroidism, endometriosis, and fertility issues as I'm trying to have children. And that freaking sucks. It sucks. And it's all because I was on birth control for more than a decade. And I'll get into that more. But anyway, at the end of it all, this birth control essentially just gave me a fake bleed, did not balance my hormones at all like they said it would, In fact, it actually made my situation worse because if they would have diagnosed me properly with endometriosis, like they did later in my life, they would have found out that, I probably need to find a different form of treatment. Maybe instead of taking fake estrogen, that birth control is, maybe I should try something like progesterone. However, even doctors today still act like there's no solution to endometriosis. So let's talk about endometriosis for a minute. A lot of women have it more than realize have it. Some have it worse than others. Essentially, it is when there is too much inflammation in your body due to poor inflammatory diet and an excessive amount of estrogen. Funny how that works, right? Which is what birth control is, fake estrogen. So anyway, this inflammation can cause these little black tar-like tissue growths to form on our organs, mostly our ovaries and uterus and reproductive organs, but they can grow on any organ they so choose. Apparently, I'm at higher risk of heart disease because I have endometriosis, which means it could probably grow on my heart if it wanted to. But we're not going to let it do that because there's a solution, as most doctors won't tell you. But there's always a natural solution to these things. Anyway, these little guys can cause excruciating amounts of pain when a woman's estrogen doesn't get checked by the progesterone that should be at its peak during her cycle, which is why her cycles are, or our cycles, mine included, are horrible. Absolutely horrible, excruciatingly painful. Some women with endometriosis have a lot of these little guys with little to no symptoms, and some of us have a few of these guys with a lot of symptoms. Basically, it's different for every woman. That's why it's really hard to kind of figure out what the heck it is. Apparently, that's what they tell us. Other symptoms can include constipation. Other symptoms can include constipation with excruciatingly painful bowel movements when they do occur, extreme fatigue, the inability to walk, sit, or stand due to high amounts of pelvic pain, severe mood swings and depression, and so much more. The list goes on and on. The only way to diagnose it is through a laparoscopy, which is where they go in with a little scope, look around, see if they can find any of these little buggers, and once they find them, they scrape those little buggers away so that they can test them and see if they're actually endometriosis. And in fact, that is how I found out for sure that I had endometriosis, but I kind of already knew it was coming based on my own research on the internet. What? Because, like I said, after taking birth control for over a decade and having gave my life to Christ, I felt the Holy Spirit kind of convicting me to stop taking this birth control. And so at the age of 25 or 26, I can't remember exactly, I stopped cold turkey because they said it would be fine. In fact, as I was going in for a, what do you call those? I hate them so much, I can't even remember what they're called. Pap smear. Lord. The most invasive, most degrading thing that a woman has to go through, in my opinion. It makes me want to cry every time I think about it. I literally talk my doctor out of it every time because I'm like, listen, ain't nothing going on. We're good. Please leave me alone. But I had to have, apparently, in order to keep having birth control or getting birth control prescribed, you have to go and get these pap smears done. And I was going in for my second ever pap smear with the new knowledge that I don't actually have to have a pap smear unless I'm sexually active. Guess what? Your girl wasn't sexually active. So, yeah, I'm saying that weird on purpose. I'm watching YouTube. Just like you're watching me. So, I'm like talking to the doctor, so I'm not active like that. And they're like, well, why are you on birth control in the first place? The same doctor who prescribed me birth control like 10 years prior Forgot why I was on birth control in the first place. How? Is it not written down in your notes? Did you not take me seriously? I digress. Anyway, a year or two after I stopped, I started having weird things pop up. Like my stomach would severely hurt every time I ate, especially like bread-like things. Not like I have to poop. Sorry. But like all of the muscles, my organs are contracting all at the same time, and it was painful, and there was nothing I could do about it except lay down and wait for it to pass. Sometimes it would last an hour, and sometimes it would last an entire day. And eventually I experimented and discovered that I was gluten intolerant. But even worse, yeast intolerant. Yes, the thing that goes in bread so it rises, right? I can't have that anymore. And when I tell you I love bread, I love bread. I love bread. I used to eat bread every day. Every day. Okay, Oprah. So yeah, that took some time to get used to, and I would shortcut and risk eating the gluten all the time and regretted it all the time when I was eating the Chick-fil-A all the time. Yeah, bad idea. You find out you're gluten intolerant, don't mess around. It can do some damage. Anyway, so here I am discovering, oh, I can't eat foods that I like. And the next thing that started happening was I would have severe GERD symptoms. Now, these are like gastrointestinal issues like acid reflux, heartburn, stuff like that. But mine specifically was water brash. We skipped over the heartburn and the acid reflux and went straight for the water brash. Now, if you don't know what that is, basically my esophagus starts to contract like it's giving birth because all of my stomach acid is coming back up and trying to pull the food back down, but it's not working. And the only way to get it to stop is to keep spitting, because I salivate excessively. Like I genuinely have to just keep spitting in a cup, because if I swallow it, it causes a contraction. It's terrible. So it's gross too. So I have to keep spitting into a cup. My husband hates it. And either I have to wait for that to pass and hope that it does quickly, or I have to try to get myself to throw up, because those are the only options to get that, like, Tums? No. We're doing all natural stuff now, because that stuff can cause other diseases further down the road, and I ain't about that life. But yeah, so that's gross things I have to go through. And I have to figure out when I'm more vulnerable toward it, which is around my period, and when I need to, or when I can have a little bit more freedom. But what foods I need to eat, what foods I can't eat, stuff like that. Like I can't have rice anymore. I'm discovering that right now. My body does not digest rice. But anyway, back to the story. It's the middle of 2022, and every other period is starting to get more uncomfortable, and my bowel movements more and more painful at this point. And I mean, like, screaming while pooping. And then finally in November of 2022, I'm sorry, I laugh because it's kind of funny. I laugh to keep from crying, okay? And then in November of 2022, as I was going through one of the darkest moments of my life, see the previous video, that's when I had my first out of control, excruciatingly painful period with a migraine, just like when I was 14 years old. Just like it. And so I immediately was like, I'm going to the OBGYN for the first time in my life. I'm going to an actual OBGYN, expecting that I would get more answers than I did for my general practitioner when I was a kid. And sure, I got a few more answers. However, though I asked, still no blood tests. Still no hormone testing of any kind, nothing. The only thing that they did do was an excessive amount of pap smears, if you ask me. Then they tried to violate me again with a vaginal ultrasound. But I talked my way out of that one too and got the regular on top external, on top of my belly external, I guess, I don't know what you call that, ultrasound. Praise God. I know how to talk my way out of things because I'm literally like, this is not something that's just comfortable at all for me. And I don't understand why you think that I just like, oh yeah, sure, go for it. No. This is not cool. But anyway, other than that, they finally said, listen, we think you have endometriosis. No way! Google told me that. All right? Actually, I freaking suggested it to the doctor. But, I mean, I'm going to cut that part out. So they finally said, it's probably endometriosis, which I was kind of like, yeah, most likely. There's no other explanation. And just like that, they're saying, here are your options. 1, get pregnant ASAP and pray that alters things. 2, take birth control again. Or 3, get a hysterectomy, meaning you definitely will not ever have babies. Now, none of these options sound great. Maybe the pregnant one, but that's not pressure at all. Not to mention, at that time, I wasn't married. I just started dating my husband. So it was kind of like, well, that option's kind of out the window right now. Last but not least, get a laparoscopy in hope that it works. Which, that's what I did, and listen, it barely worked. Because I still find myself in the middle of the night during my period crying and screaming and begging God to either heal me or take my life just to end the pain. It's so bad that dying feels like the better option. And it sucks. Even prescription grade pain medication wasn't helping. And yeah. Anyway, let's go through these options. 1, it's get pregnant and hope for the best, right? So that was the first option, which we aren't trying to avoid pregnancy by any means, but it's not happening either. So with the pain still being unbearable and the lack of pregnancy happening, I go to a different OBGYN. And at this point, I'm finally starting to learn for the first time in my life how female hormones are actually supposed to work. And that there are 4 phases to a woman's cycle, monthly cycle. And I'll go through that in another video, so stay tuned for that. But thankfully, this next doctor did do a little bit more digging. However, all they did was test my egg count, which they found was low, test my vitamin D, which I'm deficient, and told me I have hypothyroidism. And immediately, without even me asking questions or getting any information about the medication that they were sending me prescriptions for or filling prescriptions for, with Kroger telling me, hey, you got stuff to come pick up, I didn't even get to ask questions. I didn't even get to learn or understand anything about this new medication called levothyroxine. Apparently, that one also has virtually no symptoms at all. That's not what Google says. Just Google the ingredients Literally, okay, listen. Here's a life hack. Especially when you get a medication from a doctor and they say it's supposed to do X, Y, and Z, right? What you're going to do is you're going to go, okay, thank you, doc. You're going to go to the internet. You're going to say, okay, ingredients in this medication, right? And you're going to look at, oh, okay, this sounds like an ingredient I can't pronounce. What is that? Google it. What are the symptoms that come with it? And if it's like, oh, this so-called anti-inflammatory drug that they gave you actually has ingredients in it that cause inflammation. Or maybe they're filled with food dyes, which I don't know if you noticed, other countries ban because they're bad for you and they do horrible things to you. So let's put them in medication that's supposed to make you feel better. Does that make sense to you? The math isn't mathin', if you ask me. Anyway, I digress. So, did the blood test, found out my egg count is low, vitamin D deficient, hypothyroidism, still have endometriosis, of course. And my only solutions, once again, are really expensive IVF in order to get pregnant, which I have some issues with that I'll go over in a second. Here's some thyroid medication, which has yellow dye in it and is toxic to your gut health, which is kind of part of the problem. But who cares, right? And the only way to fix your endometriosis is birth control. But since you're trying to get pregnant, here's some pelvic floor therapy we suggest doing. Which I'm not knocking pelvic floor therapy, like it's fantastic. However, IVF, that's extreme, and not to mention expensive. Oh, and completely immoral for many reasons, but here are a few. Number one, how they collect the sperm. Try to sort that one out for yourselves. And as Christians, that's not how God intended it. Number two, it's basically a glorified version of eugenics. I mean, what do you think happens to the eggs that get rejected? The fertilized eggs that get rejected. I am under the personal belief that human life begins at conception. So the moment that egg is fertilized, it is a human being because it now has a growing life happening. It's now capable of growing into one of us in the future, like a whole human being, it's already a human being, okay? That's how we all start, okay? I don't care what you call it, it is a human being at the moment of conception. And the ones that they don't use, they literally weed out the bad genes, right? They test these little guys and they weed out the bad genes, and then the ones that have bad genes, they discard like trash. Just like we do with babies that are unwanted. Or people that are unwanted. Old people who are too much of an inconvenience. Or babies who are too much of an inconvenience. We just unlife them. Like that. Y'all. And number three, God has perfect timing, and it almost feels like you're trying to override God's plan for you in order to get what you want in your timing. Like, oh, God's not giving me a baby right now. I just think back to Sarah and Abraham when God promised them a son, and it took a long time for this son to come to be. And because they grew impatient and they were like, we want this thing right now, they did something crazy. And Sarah gave her servant, I think Hagar is her name, to her husband and said, you can cheat on me this once just so we can have a son. But then, of course, issues of jealousy came about once this child was born. And yeah, it just didn't work out at all. And then God gave them, but God still gave them, Isaac, the son that he promised. Why do we think we can just keep finding ways to go about speeding up God's process? I mean, think about this. God's timing is perfect. And God created the human body with so much complexity that if you fuel it right, you feed it right, you take care of it properly, you steward it well, it actually has the natural ability to heal itself. Did you know that? Your body knows how to heal itself. The only reason it's not doing that is because you're pumping it full of toxic chemicals and things that your body was never meant to consume. Even the medications that we are given. You realize that if you are literally a walking pill container, we'll call it, you're going to have a hard time having a normal life. You're going to be stuck on a majority of those pills for the rest of your life. In fact, they're going to fill your casket full of all of those pills that you will have taken over your lifetime. And none of them helped you because you never got better to the point where you didn't have to take those medications. Like that defeats the purpose, I think, of medication and healthcare is you're supposed to be able to get better to the point where you shouldn't need medication anymore. But no, you rely on that medication they give you. You rely on it so that they can keep making money off of you. They don't want you to get better. The medical industry is that. It is an industry. The pharmaceutical industry is that. It is a pharmaceutical industry. It is an industry. They don't care about your well-being. They care about us lining their pockets by being stuck on the drugs that they continue to shove down our throats, to be constantly sick. The food industry is an industry. They don't put people over profits and make sure that we actually can live healthy, vibrant, full lives. They only care about us living in a way that lines their pockets. It's profit over people in this country, and thank God for RFK Jr. I am on board with him. I'm praying for that man. I'm praying for everything that he wants to set out and do. I'm praying that we can get back to, like, when I think about eating as a Christian, should be your mindset. When you think about what you're putting in your body, what you're doing with your body, just know that you are called to lay down your life. You are called to put your desires to the side. So those chips and cookies and ice cream that you want to eat later, think about that. Think about how, okay, is this fueling my body well so that I can serve the kingdom well? Is it stewarding the body that God gave me? This is a temple to the Holy Spirit. This is not yours. This body, even if you're a non-believer, a believer or non-believer, your body is not yours. Your body belongs to the one who created it in his image, whether you believe that or not. But just know that God laid out what to eat and what not to eat in the scriptures for a reason. Now, I'm not saying we have to follow that law because, I mean, Jesus didn't come to abolish that, but he came to fulfill it, so he fulfilled it. However, I think we can take some wisdom from it and apply it to our lives today. And let me ask you this one thing, Christians. Do you think Jesus would actually want to eat Chick-fil-A? If you actually read the ingredients, do your research on what is in Chick-fil-A food or McDonald's or any fast food restaurant, if you did your research on every single ingredient in that food, do you honestly believe that Jesus would even want to eat that food? Do you think Jesus would defile his own body with that food? That food is unholy. Yes, it is a Christian company, and God bless them, and praise God that there are people who hold Christian standards of, listen, we take one day to rest. End of story. Don't care how hungry you are for chicken sandwiches. We take one day. Like, I don't care. Sorry, I'm going ham. I went completely off script here because I'm confidently frustrated about this. I could go all day, so I'm gonna stop there. But Christians, consider what you put in your body. Consider how you take care of your body, because if you're not taking care of it as if it belongs to God, then I think there are some idols and some sins that you need to address in your life. And I'm talking to myself too, because I have my moments where I'm like, I don't care, God. I want chips and queso from this particular Mexican restaurant, even if it's filled with seed oils and nasty chemicals that are terrible for me. Even though I could totally make pure, clean, healthy chips and queso at home. You see what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to deny yourself and take up your cross, not just in general of like, oh yeah, I need to go spread the gospel. No, you need to start in here. You need to start taking care of this in order to be able to go and take care of that. If God asked you to backpack through Europe on a whim and share the gospel with whomever you encountered, would you be able to do it? Or would you be too out of shape? Ask yourself that. Ask yourself, if God calls you to do something crazy on a whim, would you be able to drop everything and do it? Would you be willing to drop everything and do it? Or would you be too out of shape, too sick to do anything? And for me, with my endometriosis and my hypothyroidism, yeah, some days I feel too sick to do stuff. Like even this, the reason why this video is late and didn't come out on Monday like it was supposed to is because I felt sick. And that's because I didn't feed my body right. It's also because I didn't intentionally make sure that I took all the necessary steps to keep my butt off that couch. Instead, I chose laziness. And I will confess that, and I will ask for forgiveness and receive God's forgiveness. And that's why I am sitting my butt here, even though I am tired, even though my cycle is about to start in a couple days and I'm not excited about it. And I'm nervous, like, is it going to happen early? Is it going to be messed up? Is it going to be heavy? Is it going to be light? Is it going to hurt? Like all of these things I could worry about right now. But no, God called me to share this truth. And that's why I'm doing this. Let me come back to the story here. So we talked about how there were only a few options. And the first option was to get pregnant and hope for the best. Option number 2 was to take birth control and this is for helping my endometriosis. And option number 2 was to take birth control. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but endometriosis feeds on estrogen, yet their only solution is to give me more estrogen, fake estrogen, and give me a fake bleed and give me a fake period. But it turns out if you do your research, like I mentioned previously, there are ways to get rid of endometriosis. I'm finding that now. And I mean, this practically incurable disease, it's like, no, it's not. It's not. I mean, remember this. Every disease that develops can be undeveloped. Every time they say it's genetic, just remember that the reason it's being passed down your bloodline is because of generations of bad habits. Now, can you alter your DNA that gets passed down? Yes, you can. But if it can be altered, it can be unaltered. Okay? It can be reversed. It can be healed. It can be corrected, right? If you can change it one way, you can change it back the other. So it starts with you. Yeah, that's right. You, right there. Starts with you. Starts with me. Starts with you. We're making changes. Okay? Again, let me bring it back. Whew, okay. And I say all that because we live in a broken and sinful world that wants to disobey and turn from God and everything that God designed. So at every opportunity, we do what we can to corrupt what God has created good. And that includes the food that we eat. That includes the things that we do with our body. That includes working. Work was supposed to be something good, something fruitful, something beautiful that we did in a way to honor and glorify God. Exercise is something that should be done in a way that is honoring and glorifying God. You think Adam and Eve just sat there and ate all day? Like, no, God said go and take dominion over all of my creation, over the animals of the ground, the air, the sea, the vegetation. Take care of these plants. And then when he cursed Adam, after they disobeyed, after they listened to that sneaky little serpent called Satan, we end up with difficult to take care of vegetation. Animals that don't want to obey their human being masters. They obey God. They still obey God. But they do not obey humans the way that they did. I mean, Adam was naming the animals. He was naming them like they were best friends. So that doesn't tell. I mean, anyway, okay. So we corrupted the food that God created to feed the bodies that he created in his image, that God created in his image. And we corrupt it with toxic chemicals that we put in our food to make them addicting. And I mean, these chemicals, we use these chemicals that are in our food. They're like petroleum. They're stuff we put in our gas tank, in our car, to fuel our car. They do not fuel our bodies. They destroy our bodies. They fuel our car. They destroy our bodies. So why are we putting the same thing that we put in our car in our bodies? Like, that doesn't make sense. But yet we do it. And that's disgusting. Okay? Think about that for a moment. Just take some time and think about that. Anyway, turns out there's an option to get rid of endometriosis, and one of those options is to take progesterone to balance that back out so that it keeps your estrogen in check. Now, of course, you can go too far in the opposite direction, which I think you need to really be cautious when talking to your doctor about these things. Be like, listen, first find a functional medicine OBGYN. Those are way better. Way better, because I'm on supplements. I'm not on medication that has a plethora of side effects, including death. And heart attacks and depression and thoughts of, like, can you pay attention next time you see a commercial? I know everybody got Hulu, okay? And I know if you're as cheap as me, you probably still have the ads. Pay attention to those Pfizer commercials. Pay attention to the laundry list of side effects that they name. How many of those side effects scare the poop out of you? If they scare the poop out of you, probably don't take that medication, okay? Just use that as a boundary or whatever, a parameter, yep, to make your decisions. Anyway, so progesterone is one way to balance back out, which is currently what I'm on. However, I am continuing, as I suggest you always do, research. I'm continuing to research for better, cleaner ways to get myself back on track, to get myself back on track, to fix this stuff so I can actually live a somewhat normal life and not have to wake my husband up at 3 a.m. with my screaming and crying and yelling and begging of God to end my suffering. And that's one of the ways, but with this research, I've found an anti-inflammatory diet helps significantly. And now they're going to tell you don't eat red meat or dairy. But listen, your girl tried that, got worse, started eating grass-fed, grass-finished dairy. Okay? None of these GMO, corn-eating cows, okay? No more of those. I'm sorry, my papa, my abba. Sorry, Dad. I love you, but I can't. Okay? There's too many toxic chemicals, including glyphosate and all kinds of stuff that is on that corn, and it gets into the cow when a cow gets eaten, and it absorbs into their meat, and then we eat the meat, and then it causes all these problems. It's probably why I messed up in a lot of ways. Part of the reason why I mess up in a lot of ways. But if I eat raw dairy, grass-fed, grass-finished, red meat, I'm Gucci. I am Gucci, okay? Because it's not the meat and the dairy itself, it's the quality of the meat and the quality of the dairy. Because that glyphosate that's sprayed on that corn that's fed to those cows that most people eat because it's cheaper, endocrine disrupting. That means hormone disrupting. Same to your shampoos, your lotions, conditioners, makeup, endocrine disrupting. So yeah, if you've been depriving yourself of steak and you love steak, you've been depriving yourself of dairy and you love dairy, find a grocery store that sells grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Usually it has to be like some kind of local grocery store that's like super organic and they carry like the local dairy farms and all that stuff, or the local farms supply resources, whatever you want to call it, products, like the raw milk and the eggs and the beef. Like you can find those and you can get fairly cheap raw milk that's local and it tastes delicious. Oh my gosh, raw milk is so good. So good. So good. Okay, I'm done. It's delicious. Obviously, I said that like 4 times. But yeah, on top of the anti-inflammatory diet, I have found a supplement. I came across a supplement from Dr. Carnivore himself. I think his name is Paul Saladino or something like that. And it's like Heart and Soil. They use grass-fed, grass-finished meat or beef related products, but they make all these supplements that help with the different like gut issues, and it helps with thyroid, helps with fertility. And I've seen so many reviews of like women who are like, I had the worst periods and I started taking these and like within a couple weeks, Gucci. And I'm like, I'm trying that. I'm trying that today. And it's basically, it sounds disgusting. Okay. First of all, I cannot stand the smell of liver. Beef liver, any kind of liver makes me want to vomit. Like I had a roommate, I think she's watching my videos. So what's up? Who would make liver all the time. And I kid you not, she could tell you, I had to leave the apartment. I had to leave the apartment for the entire day until she was done. And she had to like open the windows, open the doors, let it air out. So I would just take my dog, I would take Raja, the cute little husky, and I would go on like an all day hike and go run a bunch of errands, go detail my car because I was like, I can't be in this house. I'm going to throw up. So I would do that. And yeah, now I'm taking a beef liver supplement. Thankfully, it doesn't smell or taste like beef liver. And thankfully, so these supplements, I say all that to say, these supplements are made up of liver, beef liver, but also for women, for women's fertility and reproductive organs, it's made up of cow reproductive organs. So female cow's ovaries and uterus and all that lovely fun stuff, it's in there. And for men, they have the male's reproductive organs all ground up into a powder and put in a capsule. Sounds terrible, sounds disgusting, but listen, if it works, I ain't gonna knock it. So if it does work, I will let you know, especially for all my endometriosis and hypothyroidism or thyroid issue ladies out there, okay? We're gonna find the solution together, okay? I don't care. I'm gonna be here. But anyway, so I'm taking a plethora of supplements now, but I'm hoping that one decreases the amount of supplements I have to take because there's so many vital things that are already in it that I could probably. But yeah, anyway, might save me money, might not, might work, might not. I'll let you know. Anyway, option number 3, hysterectomy, which is basically the equivalent of a man getting his tubes tied. In other words, no period, no pain, but no babies either, which is absolutely not an option. And no matter how much pain I experience, I mentioned earlier that I even beg for death. I beg to die when I'm in pain. Like, I've gotten to that point where I've considered taking the whole bottle of painkillers just so it would be over and I would never have to experience it again. Every time I have a period or I'm about to be on my period, I'm terrified. Is it going to hurt really bad? Am I going to be up at 3 a.m. screaming and crying? What's going to happen to me? Am I going to survive this one? Am I going to make it through this one? And all I can do in those moments is cling to Jesus. Because Jesus, my Savior, knows my suffering better than I even know my suffering. And I say that because he didn't just get crucified on a cross. All of that time leading up to it, where he had to carry his own cross, he was being beaten, he was being whipped. He had flesh ripped from his back to the point where his bones were exposed. It was just raw flesh. To the point where even when he got put on that cross, the painful experience of having nails put in your hands and feet and then being lifted up, just hanging there, feeling your skin ripping, feeling your bones breaking. But then every time you take a breath, that open wound on your back, those many open wounds that expose skin and flesh is scraping against that wood every time you lift yourself up just to breathe. Jesus suffered that. He didn't do anything wrong. But he suffered that. And so I know that in my suffering, Jesus is with me. And he's not just allowing me to go through suffering because he's mad at me or he doesn't love me. No, he wants this to be used in such a beautiful way. He wants my suffering to be for his glory. And the only way that can happen is if I let it. If I understand that this isn't about me, this is greater than me. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys about it if I wasn't going through it. There would be some woman out there who would never look at a YouTube video, but for some reason she came across mine and she finds out, oh, I'm not alone. This is something that isn't right, that needs to be fixed. And there is a solution. Or maybe she already went through the same process I had and is like, I don't even know what to do anymore. And she's about to give up life. And this video just happens to be the one video that clicks and keeps that woman from the ledge. That's all I can ask for. Is just, if it's just one person, praise God. I will suffer all day for one person, just like Jesus suffered so that I could be forgiven of my sins and be reconciled back to God the Father. That I could be in relationship with him. That I could be forgiven and glorified in him and in him alone. Anyway, I could do this all day. I could talk about this all day, but that would make for a very long video, which I've already have a very long video. So, all that to say, I am on a mission to solve my female problems in the most natural way possible, and I want you to join me in that. And as Christians or non-Christians, the way that I'm taking is prayerfully the way that God intended for us to take care of our bodies, so they function properly, that they can heal themselves properly and be fueled properly. And ultimately, we can use our bodies the way that they were meant to be used, and that is to glorify God in all things. In all things. All things. Okay? And like I said, hopefully I can help at least one young woman avoid the trap of birth control and a heavily medicated life and show her that God's ways are better than our ways. So please stay tuned for future episodes where I dive deeper into the topics related to faith, fitness, and food. I will see you next time. Grace and peace.